You're listening to the Out of the Box podcast with Timmy, Halisa and Sinosure.
Welcome to Out of the Box podcast. I'm sure you've missed us. I'm Halisa, and then there's Juro, Timmy, and of course Sinosure. Today we'd like to start with just talking about the recent protest, which is End Bad Governance protest, a form of resistance that or reaction, so to say, that Nigerians have decided to do. Hi guys, how you doing?
Hi. I'm good. How you doing?
I am good. How are you doing? I hope
Yeah,
you're fine. It's been a
yeah.
while. It's a pleasure to be back again. And I hope we're going to have a very robust and interesting conversation today.
Hope so. So yes, we're thinking about how we're going to have this conversation, right? If we're going to talk about just what happened from personal experience, or if we're going to give a review based on should I say theory. If we look back at what has happened in Nigeria, if we just take it from starting from 2023, where do we start from? What angle do we take this conversation to? And we're like, you know what, this is a conversation we're trying to have right after a long break. Let's just talk about it like Nigerians, because there's always something to talk about when it comes to Nigeria. But this one, to be specific, is one we were very much interested in talking about, because I think every one of us participated in our own way. Couple of Nigerians did participate, and I think that we should talk about it based on our own experience first, or you can even go to historical perspective. Anyways, it's just an open floor. Just talk about End Bad Governance protest. Just tell us what the protest was about, just in case someone is tuning in from what is the farthest country from here? A white dude tuning in from Australia. I don't know. But let's just give that background, because there are sometimes when you be thinking that these things don't reach, like, people know about these things, but you'll be shocked that people do not. However, for this particular protest that happened August 1st to August 10th, I was very impressed to a certain level at the reach. A lot of people knew about it. A whole lot of people knew about it. It was on a lot of people's stories, even people that were saying that they wouldn't participate themselves. They knew about it. The reach was there. So maybe let's take it from the organization aspect or the personal aspect. What do you think, Dorothy? What do you think? Sinosure.
Yeah. I think we just take it from the way it started to where it currently is right now. Because it has not ended. And I think that like I said before the protest started, that this it has potentials to be another movement, like a full-blown movement, independent movement on its own. And since it's like kind of like broad, it's not like centered around just one objective, like the NSAS was like centered around one objective, you know which was to end police brutality, and most especially one of the deadly units of the police force in Nigeria called SARS. But this is kind of broad. So when you say end bad governance, I mean, it's something that you can't finish overnight. It's something that would keep on going on, and even if it even trickles down to a massive restart of the nation, which most people will even which some people will call a revolution. I mean, you're still going to need to have those vanguards who are going to be ready to who are going to stay awake, despite whatever whatever it transcends into, like whatever happens, whatever shift happens, so that we don't have a scenario whereby we feel like, oh, we've protested and some change has come, and then we now go back to sleep, and before things are going back to the way that they were before. So and that just summarizes the whole protest as a protest that could have sparked up a potential movement and bad governance Nigerian movement, because like everyone knows, we have extreme bad governance, terrible leaders in Nigeria. and we've always had that. I don't think we've ever had good leaders at any point. I don't think we've ever had leaders who have cared, like really, 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 really cared about the people. Maybe with the exception of a few people that led us way before I was born, but right now politics in Nigeria is not, and governance in Nigeria is not about the people. It's not centered around the people. And like that's why you would see, just like on some of our previous episodes, where you see, us talking about a president who can buy like a 5 billionaire yacht, and the rest, he would allocate 10 billionaire to all of the entirety of Nigerian students, to get a loan and everything. So the governance in Nigeria, and I think if you even look at the broader picture of Africa, it's no longer centered around the people, and that it presents a problem. And that's why, Nigerians, I would say, after seeing the Kenyan protests, because due to the last election that we had, a lot of Nigerians were demonizing protests. Both those that say that said that they wanted to keep the system the same way, and those both those that also said they wanted to create change. And that's because there were some people who had been radical, from like 2018, and people did not want them to get that particular shine, or people did not want them to have any sort of political clout, because they were also on the ballot. And that's talking about people in the African Action Congress. So everyone started demonizing, because the African National Congress presented a radical presidential candidate who is pro-protest, who is Omoyele Sowore, who is a veteran when it comes to, shaking the establishment with radical protest boots on ground. So we saw all parts of a divide, all arms of a divide, political divide, trying to just demonize, protest, demonize radical action, belittle it just because they didn't want, those people to get any level of political clouds. You will hear people say things like, no be just protest, what's the essence of protest? Or so many establishments, so many narratives that were in favor of the establishment. And that's why you see that now it's very difficult to even spark up a protest in Nigeria. They'll tell you, activists don't even make great leaders. Protesters are just useless people and everything. So I would say that, when after the elections and the whole people's dreams were dashed, a lot of people's hopes were dashed via the ballots, and they took it to the judiciary, and they were still even abusing protesters at that particular time, and they took it to the judiciary, and their hopes were also bashed by the judiciary, and they were left to the fate of just having to cope with Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And 1 year later, they saw all of the things that the guy was doing, and the guy is still doing. It doesn't even favor them, and it's counterproductive to the nation that we want to see, right? And but they had already killed the vibe of protests. They already killed that radical perspective of how we could challenge the system. Not until we saw the Kenyan protests. So the Kenyan protests were extremely radical. They were, in fact, it was like like a movie in real time. So and when we Nigerians, when we saw that, I guess that's what now inspired us to now say that, okay, at this particular time, is like this protesting. This is what is actually going to work. And we saw a replica art of one of the, nobody knows who put up that artwork, but a replica artwork of one of the Kenyan posters, right, with a grunge background, that's white, and I'm sure people, and I'm saying all this so that for the sake of history is well documented, and that white and brown background, misspelled slaves, where slaves was misspelled as salves or something like that, days of rage. And we saw that artwork, and it went viral online, and a lot of people started organizing around that, saying, what, we're going to come out in August and we're going to protest. And then the Revolution Now movement and Take It Back guys, also said, well, you know what, hey, August 5th is the day that we tried to do the revolution in 2019, or we organized Revolution Now protest. So, hey, we're going to be part of this too, but we most likely will come out on August 5th and everything. And, a lot of people started having conversation around that, and saying, oh, let's do this in unison, let's do this in unity. And before Taking Back movement also announced that, okay, you know what, we'll come out August 1st, we'll be there throughout the entire protest and everything. And that's how basically we came about this End Bad Governance in Nigeria protest. And people kept on bringing up demands. Twitter spaces were hosted, Facebook lives were hosted, TikTok lives were hosted. A lot of conversation, it sparked conversation amongst the community of change seekers on the internet and everything. And people started coming up with demands. Okay, if we're going to go for this protest, what should be our demands? What do we want the government to do? And at the end of the day, a lot of demands sprung up. I think about 40 demands that we later shrunk into 15, and whatever we have that is out there right now. So yeah, that's basically what happened, and how I think the End Bad Governance protest actually came about.
Yeah, and just to piggyback of what you said, you mentioned NSAS and you're talking about end bad governance protest, and NSAS and end bad governance. People have been trying to put this side by side to compare it. They'll say, NSAS, the demand was straightforward. It was just one demand. And bad governance, many people will be like, what are you protesting for? I feel like that's like the most irritating question when people ask me, what are you protesting for? And I'm wondering, like, what do you mean, what are you protesting for? Because I think maybe just generally I've reached the point where I get really irritated really easily, so I have to tap out quickly and maybe go look for chocolate or something, because I'm like, what are you protesting for? You want me to tell you? You want me to convince you? And that's why when people talk about let's mobilize for protest, I've been trying to ask questions like, what do you mean let's mobilize for protest? It's like, let's tell people how how bad things are. And I say, okay, from WhatsApp messages that I've seen from, like, let me say parent WhatsApp, I think there's enough information there that is showing people what issues we have in Nigeria, and everybody will say Allah Isa. Um down below mm-hmm, I don't know. I'm trying to use the correct this thing to refer to him. But anyways, I wanted to say skit maker, but I felt like that was like too reductive. But a skit maker is a skit maker, is a human being too. But there's this political skit maker that has been blowing up recently, and I'm sure he has been doing a lot of rounds everywhere, on TikTok. I don't know about TikTok, but Instagram, I see him, Twitter for sure, and then Facebook. There are many people and he tries to break down information into bits for you to understand, when he's like, okay, 5 billion was used for yacht, for example. I don't know if he did this particular one about yacht, but for example, he could say something like, if they use 5 billion for the presidential yacht, that 5 billion would have been used to make 200 schools, blah 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 blah. And I think that's like easier for people to digest, and he says it with the language, that the indigenous language of northerners. So I think that helps. Maybe majority of northerners, maybe not all. But then I think with that, there's also that information. But I'm even thinking, before now, there's been time where people have come up, and where we've had heroes in quote that would come up and start casting the government. And by casting, I mean bringing information, should I say whistleblowing, just to signify, hashtag freedom or whatever. Yeah, it's not or whatever, it's a very serious case, but I'm trying not to go into that because we're talking about this conversation. Anyways, there has been people historically, even if we don't go all the way back, even if we take it to 19, just when we got independence, journalists have been very, very important in societies where they have always told stories. They've always, put out information there. Even academic people, although nowadays sometimes it looks like it's slightly anti-intellectual, or, there have always been people that will come out, spring up. They've always told us things that's happening. So it has reached the point now where you're like, you kind of have all the information. And even though you don't even need that kind of big information, you can really personalize it and think about, how is my life right now? And majority of people are actually like suffering. But I understand the escape part, but then you cannot be asking me, what are people protesting for? And when people ask me, what are people protesting for? I'm like, huh? Okay, so you want me to read out the 15 demands for you? Or what, and then if I read out the 15 demand for you, now you want to debate. Why do you want to debate? What's that urge that you want to go back and forth? Like, you want to win a talk, you want to go back and forth with me. But anyways, this is me ranting a bit. But then the question that came up in all of this was, um I said, strategically, is it a good thing where you have one demand for a protest, or when you have multiple demands? I think this is a question that many people might have asked themselves, just like as a tool for, the best result for a protest, even though at this point you're like, isn't it the outcome that will tell us the correctness of the process, So, but then again and again, this is a question that I think I've heard, end SARS where we have one demand, and then end bad governance where we have like 15 demands. Anyone can jump in. Yeah.
It's you have to look at the scope of the actual protest that we are actually organize, because like again, the name of any protest will tell you what the protest is talking about. Like, when you say NSAS, like I said before, it's specific. It's just one issue, and you can protest for one issue, and you can protest about one issue rather, and you can protest, about numerous issues. I think the true concept of democracy is that people have that liberty to do whatever they want. If they want 50 demands, but they can go out and protest on these 50 demands. And what you when we talk again, it's end bad governance. So a bad governance is a wide scope. Even if we go out there and we say, okay, reduce the price of fuel to 200 naira, that's not going. Okay, yes, is it going to affect the prices of things in the country? Is it going to affect our lives drastically? Yes, but we have to add other demands, because that alone is not going to fix bad governance in Nigeria. Now we now have to add other demands. We have to tell them, where do we want these things redirected to? So, and that's why you start seeing demands like, oh, Nigerians want their politicians to send their children to public schools, because we know that when you remove that money from, when there's where fuel is cheaper, and so on and so forth, you can now actually say, okay, we want whatever we have. Or if we say we want to scrap the Senate, let me give you a better example. Let's say we want to scrap the Senate, and we have savings from that. Nigerians can now say, okay, we want that money redirected into tourism, because, like I said, and bad governance, for what I foresaw, or what I still foresee, is that if you actually sit down as young people, right, and plan this movement well, keep all of our egos aside, keep all of our interests, many of our interests aside, and plan this movement well.
Can we
this
really,
is something that could go on.
pardon?
Yeah.
Can we really keep our interests aside? I would assume our interest actually is the one bringing us all into the conversation. Like the
Yeah,
young
but
man we spoke with
we have
yesterday.
interest. I think when I said interest, I mean personal interest, not collective interest, right?
Yeah,
Because
you know what I'm trying to say
yeah.
now. Like in the sense of the young man we spoke with yesterday, that's Isaiah, wherein we were able to establish that he now thinks the system is not proper and something needs to be done, because he figured out that the judicial system does not dispense justice. I mean, does not administer justice, right? So I think generally, I understand largely where you are going without a show of interest, but I think we might have to just use another word as opposed to interest, because at the end of the day, end bad governance is a thematic topic. That's how we call it in the field, and it embodies a lot of things, right? Don't forget also, when we said end SARS the last time, a lot of people don't also know that end SARS is a thematic topic if you look at it more deeply. Because there's no way you are going to end SARS that you are not going to end Nigeria, because end SARS is just a symptom of a far much bigger problem. I just think if you look at it that way, it might just further make the conversation better. And then, of course, I mean, I butted in while you were talking. I would like that when you are done, I will also try to share some other things that I think are important and would help the conversation, really.
Yeah, so yeah, you're actually correct, right? Even though sometimes right now I just try to understanding that, a lot of our population, understanding the population, understanding the people, right? Because you say if you want to, or I think that if you want, let me not say they say, I think that if you want to create change, you have to understand the terrain where you are. You have to understand how the people think and everything. So I try to simplify these things, So yes, we know that, the NSAS is a systemic problem, and it's not just because SARS is not just SARS because they want to be SARS. There's an underlying systemic problem that creates institutions like that and makes them go rogue, right? And if you want to solve that problem, just saying we want to end just one unit of the police is not going to solve the problem. But again, in revolutionary struggle, sometimes you need to have some little wins, and yes, while we understand the final goal of ending the system that enables this oppression, especially when you're working with a large population that may not be revolutionary in mindset, you need to just have some little wins. Let them know that, oh, they can challenge this little thing. Let them see that, okay, yes, we can actually fight for one rogue unit of the Nigerian police force to be scrapped, and they actually the government bows to the pressure, the people power, actually succeeds, right? And when they've seen that, we can now graduate to say, okay, if we can do this, we can do more. And it's also the same thing like that I usually say on the side of the establishment, that, and I tell people that the establishment will keep on pushing. So they've taken fuel from 200 naira to about 1,000 naira, and they've seen that you cannot do anything. You can only talk, right? So they're going to come up with crazy things. And that's why when you check, like Halisa said, there's always something to talk about Nigeria. If you go on Twitter right now, you go on TikTok, go on Facebook, put on your TV, there's something else to complain about. And they will keep on pushing because they know that the majority of the population will do nothing about it. So it's the same thing with people power. So drawing it back to the conversation, I'm like, if Nigerians can know that they can have a small win, and that's why sometimes we try to dumb all of these things down to say, okay, yes, we understand that SARS, there's no way you're going to say end police brutality and you won't have to end the system that enables it. But sometimes we just allow people to fight, or we just fight with alongside people to gain some small kind of wins. And coming back to the end bad governance and answering the question that Halisa really asked, about the demands, I think it is strategic. You can look at it. It depends on what direction your strategy is going. Because sometimes that we have a lot of problems in the country, and we don't want to, just because if you look at the distance between when we organized NSAS protest and when we did end bad governance, it's like 4 years apart. It literally took the grace of God for Nigerians to even come out on the streets again for another protest, right? And given all of the issues that we have with religion, with tribalism, we know we have a lot of problems. So just making it centered around only one problem that would not really solve anything for Nigerians, is not strategic enough for me. I think it's more strategic to expand the scope of why we're going out to protest, what our demands are. And one thing I was telling people, before the protest is, when we are going out, let's go out with the mindset that when we achieve the objectives, the goals of the protest, the demands of the protest, if they are addressed, we know that we have tyrants as leaders. We know that we have goats, we have animals as leaders, and they don't listen. Their ears are blocked. We know that African leaders generally are tone deaf. But if these demands should be revolutionary, they should be demands that if we get to achieve them, it's going to change the course of this country forever. Even if you bring down the price of 4 to 200 naira, it doesn't change the course of this country forever. But when we have a new constitution, that changes the course of this country forever. When we have referendum, that changes the course of this country forever. When we can force our politicians to, scrap the Senate, force our politicians to send their children, to public schools, we know that all of those things are going to have impact, and, when we even look deeper, we'll see that, on the demands of the protest, there were a lot of revolutionary ideas that were on that, protest demand. So I think it's more strategic to have more demands than just have one. But also, when you also go into the field, all right, and you start protesting at a certain point, because, and I'm speaking realistically here, at a certain point, your protest is going to lose steam, right? Because we understand the economic conditions that we have in Nigeria, where a lot of Nigerians are poor, they live hand to mouth, they can't survive on protest grounds beyond some days. Unlike some other countries where you have social welfare, where you have health, where you have education, you don't have to worry about your children's school fees and everything. And then you can see people sustaining, you can see people even sacrificing themselves, and because they know that the system in some way will take care of them, right? So at a particular point, your protest is going to lose steam. So when your protest is about losing steam, you can review, okay, what has been met, what has not been met, what demands have not been met. Can we retreat? Because it's a war, and even in war, sometimes you retreat and you go regroup. You have more conversations. You talk about your successes. You talk about your gains, and eventually, you can now come back and say, okay, we're calling this off for now, but we are going out again. And I think that's what has been done. With talking about the Fearless in October protest is going to come back. That's going to come in October. So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. So I know sure you were saying, but before you go, me, I definitely do not think that it's because people cannot feed. That's why they cannot sustain a protest. I think it's a mindset, even though there are some times where I could, double speak when it comes to this. But I definitely think that is more like mindset than that people cannot feed. Because, okay, yeah, there are places where people still protest up to today, where they are like, bring some people that participated in, Nazi Germany to book, even though we are doing well now. There are places that people still tell you that, Japanese soldiers did blah, blah, blah. So bring them to book, and they are still protesting up until today. We know all of those things. But I still think that most of the protests, or many, actions at the barricade, was done where things were not going well. And I think, when I think material conditions were not right, except if we want to talk about, let me not go to around the world, but I think it's just a mindset thing, and it's a thing that we might have to discuss on maybe a more on a different type of level, maybe psychological level, than just people cannot feed, and that's why they might not be able to sustain a protest for longer. But anywho, Sinusha, what were you saying?
Yeah, I think first off, there was a point you were trying to make earlier, and I think we might need to go into it a little bit more from another perspective, really, right? And a very good way to clarify this point that I'm trying to make, or make it very simple for all of us to ease into, is to look at the Nigerian state historically. The Nigerian state historically was built around elite consensus. Now, that elite consensus led to a sense of nationalism, right? I mean, was born from a sense of nationalism, right? And what ordinarily it should create is a sense of nationalism amongst the populace. Let me explain this in a much better way. I'm saying we gathered in this house, we are all in this house, and then all of a sudden, I figured out that something is not right with the plumbing of the house. So I decided to check all the pipe channels to ensure that things are okay. So in the course of checking the pipe channels, I realized that our electricity bill comes down, or our water bill comes down. So it is left for you as a person, right? If you are looking at me doing that and it's benefiting us, so now see, maybe there are other things also that could be contributing to the cost that we are currently incurring that you can help cater to. But what happened with the Nigerian case is immediately I finished checking that tap, then some benefits start occurring to me, owing to the fact that you cannot see those possibilities. And then I became locked in that world. And instead of helping or, inspiring a sense of nationalism in you, a sense of problem solving in you, I did not. So what now became the order of the day is the fact that the Awolowo, the Zik of this world, the Tafawa Balewa, the Ahmadu Bello of this world, they were nationalists. Largely from what we can see anyways, especially the Awolowo, the Zik, and what have you. So now, if you now go a notch higher, you will now realize that somewhere in 1952, 1951, 1952, 1953, 1954, up to 7. Those things were very common. But what now happened was the fact that the people, these people have sense of nationalism. They fought for independence. They fought for this. They fought for that. They got independence. But one thing is the independence we needed, just like the South Africans in 1994, is not complete. The South Africans in 1994, they did not get economic freedom. In 1960, we did not get economic freedom. But we are continuing to go ahead like that anyways. So what that now creates, we have not created a situation wherein the elite continues to be the one that dictates everything that happens in the country. So people have been getting pissed over the years. It's not new. But what they have just been doing is they have been living in denial. So now to drill down a little bit, the quality of those elites now also started declining because opportunities does not exist. The kind of people that emerge in political offices are now largely people who perhaps for the want of job and they couldn't find, they ended up in political offices. So it now becomes a situation where dog eats dogs for people to get into political office because that's where it seems like there is some sense of economic freedom.
Sorry, did you say the people that got into political office could not get jobs? That's why. Are you talking about the essays, or are you talking about the real elite? As real can be in the African context.
The supposed elite, as they are today, occupying public offices. They
cannot get jobs.
They are low quality elite. They are people who, for one reason or the other, find themselves in politics, not to serve the people. For instance, the president today, there are still allegations on his neck that he traded drug in Chicago. That's not a quality person. A quality person makes wealth through an enterprise. Oh, there is the issues around Gbajabiamila, the chief of staff, allegedly taking a client's money in the US and getting suspended from the bar as a lawyer for a moment. And then later he came to Nigeria and he started using his full name. As opposed to the Femi Gbaja, it became Femi Gbajabiamila. So the point of note is that all of them, the lives they have lived in the past, shows that they are not quality elites. Is he the one that was importing empty fuel tankers into Nigeria and collecting subsidy money? They are all, one way or the other, you find that they are low quality elites that do not have what it is required, the kind of empathetic leadership that is required to save this kind of country that needs economic freedom. So our people have just been looking at them and just looking away and saying, okay, let's make do with what we have. Let's make do with what we have. But in August 2024, our people came to the reality that, we need to show our displeasure. Oh, we need to have 10 days of rage. But what is now very profound, and which is why I am a very big person on legitimacy of authority, is the fact that if a people are saying they are discontent with what we are doing, the answer is not to slap them. If you see the number of military men, member of the Nigerian police force, Nigerian civil defense, the DSS, that should not even be DSS, they should be SSS, that were deployed towards threatening protesters, towards inflicting harm on protesters, towards extrajudicial arrest, towards charges that are not even making sense. If you see the number of people deployed towards us, so you will understand the fact that what we have and we think is leadership is actually, in the real sense, I don't want to call it a stealership because I'm not sure there's a word like that. It's actually thieves masquerading as leaders to steal the country's resources, because there is nothing particularly that makes anybody want to serve a people, and when they show displeasure, that person is unwilling to listen to them. And if he's unwilling to listen to them, and if I say, Alisa, if I say, this money, our money that is in your care, you are not managing it very well, right? And this money is our retirement money. you have the option of either telling me, I am managing it like this because I think it is better this way. I have calculated the risk, I've calculated the return, and I think this is the outlook I have, and that is why I have done what I have done. That is being accountable to the people that are asking questions, because in the real sense, those mass actions are a form of questioning, a form of request, a form of making your grudges known. So if you are not going to come to them and say, this is what we are doing, that's what we are doing, we have heard what you said we should do, let us do something about it. And by the way, the people gave them heads up of more than 2 weeks. And what they were largely doing was bribing imams, bribing pastors, bribing traditional rulers, influencing everybody they can influence just to discourage people from protesting. Now, you can't beat a child, right? And then still cover their mouth from crying. You should choose one. It's either you don't beat the child or you beat the child and you allow the child cry. The second option that they would have had was to say, oh, this thing we are doing is for the benefit of this country. But you people said you don't want. So since you don't want, let me do a David Camera on you people. Let me resign. Because I cannot do what you're asking me to do, because it's not logical to do it. It is not economically efficient to do it. Okay, I'm going to resign. People have those two options. But you know the one they choose? The one where they don't explain anything to people and they beat those people up. And at the end of the day, they deploy thugs, they deploy all of the devices that is at their disposal. One thing, just to ensure that you do not speak. This is not democracy. It cannot be democracy. So in the real sense, that issue has been coming down. And you see, have you heard some of our supposed leaders talk before? The bar is so low, that I am not sure any one of them there can write a proposal for anything and get it. The bar is so low. For some people, it's not a matter of even skill. For some of them, it's a matter of conscience. They have no conscience. A very good example of Pablo. God's will.
Protest, let me eat. I'll be stay and protest, let me stay in my house and eat.
Yeah, you see.
I mean, I would never even want to quote him verbatim. It's like
said,
I'm dropping my IQ.
Just imagine how insensitive he is. So in the real sense, right, what we were asking for in that election are the basics, the things that should have just.
Are you saying the protest?
The protest, pardon me.
Yeah.
Pardon me, protest. What we're asking for were largely things that are the basics that no human being should be asking for. If the people is being governed by a book, a code, a rule, a guideline, let's call it a constitution. And they say at any point in time that they have issues with that constitution. It's only in Nigeria that I hear it will be difficult to change it. How did you form it? Did all of us bring any constitution from heaven? I don't know, maybe this makes sense to you. The first constitution that anybody drew in this world, did they bring it from heaven? Nobody brought it from heaven. We sat down one day, we said we've had enough, and then we drew up a line, a bunch of law that is going to guide our activities. So in essence, I'm just trying to actually bring light to what you said earlier, to say the Nigerian people are able to do this time because they are getting back to the world. And interestingly, this is being led by a group of people that has a record, right, of doing mass action. So they know what to expect from the government per time. But generally, if I'm to introduce or perhaps do a review of what happened at the protest, I think the protesters conduct themselves at the top level in terms of strict adherence to what is required, which is in the sense of what the requirements are. Okay, we want this, we want that, we want this. They were properly tabled. But you know who didn't come to the table? The demagogue in power.
But do you think it's I don't know, maybe it's just today, or maybe I'm in a pessimistic place, or maybe it's called Afro-pessimism. But then I don't know the rationale behind you knowing that a state is perpetually violent, and then you understand that the government is lack of conscience, as people like to say it, even though those types of words I don't really care for them so much these days. But even like, it's like we have a complete knowledge of what this is, and I don't think, okay, maybe this is a state where it's like people are completely backed against the wall, like you said, right? But like, isn't it completely, it might just be that the people do not completely, and when I say on they do have the information for me, from my own perspective, but maybe they don't have all the information, but I think they have the basic information of my life can definitely be better. And you're in this state of perpetual violence, right? Isn't it a state of irrationality that people are still not violent? Because you said the people acted well, they acted themselves. And I don't know, it's like, yeah, we clap for everybody for acting well and acting themselves, which is what I even went back and forth as much as I can remember, when people were saying the protesters are violent or something, and I'm like, I didn't hear any record of any protesters killing anyone, right? But we have a lot of record.
I
We have
think I,
record
I
of.
think I think the first thing we need to be clear about is, no matter what the protesters in this case who were indeed the oppressed do, they did well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. This well that we are saying the protester
Well
did.
encompasses any form of resistance.
Okay, cool.
So in the real sense,
That's fair.
when I say well, what is fair is that if anybody is slapping you, right, you find a way to ensure that that slapping ends. Right? If you are going to cut off the hand, it is your way. If you are going to have to slap the person back so they can't lift their hands up, it is your way. If you are going to tie the hands behind, it is your way. Whichever way you've decided to fight against anyone who is going to kill you, it is your way. You have done well. And I think we have gone past the stage. And I think we should have gone past the space wherein we are saying, oh, we are sitting down like a lame duck. I think a lot of people are getting past it from what I can see everywhere, even on social media. I think where we are going to now is where there's a consensus about meeting the violence of this state with violence. But how soon before we get there? It took us more than 60 years before we got here. How soon before we get there? So largely, the protest was a success, really. And I think I met a lot of wonderful people for the few period that I was there. And I also see the state, in their shameful manner, continue to try to threaten in disguise, abduct people, kill people as well in Abuja, and what have you. So it's largely a case of saying, okay, you need to understand the Nigerian system. If you understand the Nigerian system, then you understand the Nigerian problem. The Nigerian problem is simple. The people are not getting carried along in any decision making. Elections does not reflect the will of the people. So at the end of the day, the people have to find a way to voice out, and protest is one of the ways. Considering what we have now had, right, the government continues to show that they do not have any regard for protest or protesters. So if they continue that way, you make peaceful revolution impossible. You palpably are trying to make violent. You are going to make violent revolution inevitable. You get. So I mean that largely is the way I am seeing all of this, right? And I think they need to also know that this end back governance protest, the majority of the people that led it are the ones standing in between violence, complete utter violence, and breakdown of the country. Now, they're the ones who are forestalling it. They're the ones who are ensuring that it doesn't become of the order of the day. That there's a complete violence resistance in this country. So the government better listen to them and do what is right before there's a mass consciousness that people can actually indeed use violence to push back when things are not in their favor. I mean, I will rest for a moment.
Yeah. So draw it to me. What do you have? What have you like?
Yeah, so the conversation about And I'll just start off on the conversation about violence. I think it's not it's a conversation that I think is just it's not we're not there yet, to be honest. I don't think we're there yet because when you see people that, because the truth is that we even when we're having this conversation, I think, in political discourse, again, communication is very important. And I think a lot of our people don't know how to communicate, right? Because for me, it's not violence. We should be talking more about self-defense. So you're not the one that would define what it is or whatever it's for, or we rather, would define what it is for us. For us, it's about defending ourselves. It's about defending ourselves, about defending our future, right? But I think we should not jump steps. The first step
That's not
is
what
to
I'm
get
saying. Are
people.
you
Yeah.
responding to what I said?
No, I'm responding to what Sinoshaw was saying. Yeah.
Because if
So
you if
I
if
don't know,
if you
except I
say
didn't hear
we're not there
properly.
yet, that's not like a, like you
Yeah.
said, it's not also a choice for you to make, right? I'm just saying the irrationality, and that's why I took it to maybe mindset, the
Yeah.
rationale behind the fact that a state is willing to harm you, and then
Yeah. And that,
I will
yeah.
come and clap for you for not resisting that with everything you've got. So I don't know if I want to like clap for that as being well, or for us to just say, okay, we stayed on code. If we say, okay, we stayed on code, and maybe that's why Sinosho explained it further, and I think I understood like the perspective of what he was saying. No, it's not just
Yeah.
it's not just we've had these conversations before now, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Me, I
Yeah. Well,
personally just feel like
yeah.
one day we might have to bring somebody that deals in understanding the black mind or understanding the Nigerian mind, that really read it in school and up to like maybe PhD level or something, even though it's in a, I don't know, whatever way, and the person is tapped in with that kind of like mentality. Because what I'm trying to say is, for me, it's pretty difficult for me to say somebody to clap. I think it's we act very irrationally, and that's not based on what we decide to do. We act irrationally in the sense that we know what the state is, and we know we had that conversation about saying peaceful protest and everything. We're just like, sometimes we're even, maybe this is like a setup in a certain way, that when you do not act in a certain way, the state is going to do this to you, as if the state was not going to do it anyway. So that's just the conversation. I don't know if it's a broad conversation about violence like we've had before that we want to have. And with this, I just feel like maybe we should just keep it in the whole realm of, I guess,
So,
peaceful protest, because I don't
so
know, it's like this is
yeah,
some political
I
correctness
understand.
too. I don't know.
No, no, it's not. It's not about politically. It's not about being politically correct for me. I just have a different perspective to it, and my perspective is you cannot jump the steps. The
But
first
that's
step
then
is
that's
that
wrong then.
people.
If you say
Well,
you cannot jump the step, it's not my calling. It's not my
yeah,
call,
I
like,
understand.
to, and the state is already, nature is already violent. And so now if I don't
You
act that way,
we
you're
have
not
a
telling me I
long,
jump.
yeah. So we have a long way to go. First off, you're coming out again. That's why I said we need to understand our people. We need to understand the minds of our people. We need to understand where currently our people are. And our people are not there yet. First off, you're just coming out of a period whereby protest is not even the popular narrative. I know what we had to do in this particular protest. I know even what the conversations that we had to have on social media, where people will come up to a platform where people are going to go and risk their lives. Like you
But
said,
before
this is a
before
very violent
NSAS,
state.
before NSAS,
Yeah,
what was people's opinion about protest? Because there are sometimes that we feel like many things that are happening now are new when they are not really. Like, for example, many
the
people say
before NSAS.
tribalism,
Yeah,
tribalism, tribalism. And I
yeah,
remember what it was for Fulani, the conversation. And sometimes everybody would just be like, I guess well deserved, because, had cow rearers all over the country. So maybe. So,
yeah.
but
So
it's almost like
before
now it's like a
NSAS.
new conversation now that many of these things are happening, and I'm like, is it that new? But what was the mindset like before, NSAS, when it comes to protest?
Yeah, so before NSAS, the mindset was much different. The mindset towards protests, on the side of the people, because there are two sides. There's the side of the people, there's the mentality of the people, the mindset of the people, the ideas that people are espousing, or the narrative. I think that captures it better. And the narrative of the establishment. The narrative of the establishment in Nigeria has never been pro-protest. Never been. And that's when I see people say, oh, if we had, you guys are the ones that voted APC, if it was another government in power. In 2012, they killed people that went out to protest against fuel subsidy. They've always been killing protesters in Nigeria. Even during, our post-military rule, they've been killing people, slaughtering people, kidnapping people, arresting people. But one thing is that on the side of the people, the narrative was pro-protest. The narrative was pro-resistance. But on the side of the government, it has always been against. But due to the 2023 elections, and I stated where all of these things came out from, I stated it clearly, and I don't think there's any other reason why it's not like that. The reason was because they started saying they saw a reemergence of radicals in politics, in active partisan politics, and they did everything possible to demonize those people. Because let's be honest, protest is something that it takes a lot of courage, and people applaud because we have a population that, not even because the population are kind of like, a little bit fearful about protests and everything, but even across the world, wherever you have people who are radical, they always take the shine, they always take the forefront, right? And the narrative that was will I say circulated amongst even people who claim, or even people who claim to be anti-establishment, is that we don't need protest. So they pushed it down. They pushed it way, way down. So we are just coming out of that era. So we have to take it step by step. And when I mean that we have to take it step by step, the first step is to get people in mass, Nigerians in mass, and I'll still go further to explain what me I've been, preaching, because mass action is not the only revolutionary kind of action. It's not, for me, it's not the only thing. If you can't get mass action, we try other means. And that's why we say by any means necessary. There are so many other means, So, like I was saying, the first step is to get people out there in mass. The truth is that if 1 million people are out on the streets, let me give an example in Ojota. No thug. Let's even start, because now we have three arms of oppression that we saw. The military, the police, and then these ones who will do the dirty job, who are not on uniform, who cannot be held accountable, which is the thugs, right? So let's even eliminate one. If you have 100,000 people out on the street, no thug will attack any protester anywhere in Lagos or anywhere in Nigeria. That's one. So that's the first step. So the first thing that we need to understand is that our people are not there mentally yet. The reason why you had this End Bad Governance protest is not because it is because of Kenya. It's because they saw it happen in Kenya. That Kenyan protest is what inspired this protest. It's not because, yes, we had a protest in June 12th protest, but that was just one movement. That was just Take It Back movement. But this mass protest came as a result of people watching on their phones, on their mobile devices, on their TV, what was happening in Kenya, how they forced a president, to withdraw a terrible finance bill, how they forced a president to come to a Twitter space and everything. So we have just done step one. And again, while we may want to achieve ultimate results from, little pockets of radical action, we just need to understand the mindset of our people and understand that we need to take it step by step. So it's going to get to a point, and I'm saying this even from personal experience, when we talk about, people fighting back, people resisting, right? When they engage, a lot of people have not even engaged in a protest before. I mean, if you check back in the last, what do you call it now, election, if you are told people after they rigged the elections that judiciary is, in fact, we told people that judiciary is going to fail you. And what did they tell you? Oh, shut up. You are stupid. You don't know what you're saying. But now, who do you think, which sensible person will you think, would actually will you tell next election, oh, let's go to the court and they will listen to you? So when people continue to engage in these actions and they keep on being repressed by the states, you will get to a time where we don't even need to have a conversation, about anything that is going to happen. But the first step is to get people out. And I also say, finally, that people will get there. People will get to a point. But the thing is, you can't resist. That's just the truth. How many people want to resist on their own? You can't resist on your own. That's why there's little or nothing that you can do on your own, or as little pockets of people. So even the best security, the reason why some people don't fight back is not because they don't want to fight back. It's not because they don't know that they need to fight back, but they are outnumbered. They're clearly outnumbered.
See,
Look
okay,
at what's
I think
happening
now
today on
that
social
you're
media.
even speaking
Right.
now, what I thought about is, since you want this process of a thing, right? The first process has to do with your sensibility, if I want to put it like that. Because I don't want to use the word consciousness. I don't know which of them is more difficult, but maybe it's the first step, like the work you do on your own mind, by your own self as a person, when you're before you sleep, or when you're just sitting down and thinking about your life. That's maybe the first work that you have to do before you actually step out there, because there are some people that you might say they stepped out there. It was just, I think every Nigerian has a reason to be outside there, but there's levels to this where even, let's say, for example, the NSAS period, where they are like, some people were just going out there to eat rice. Of course, like, you might, debatably speak to why some people will be like, okay, no, this person is a Nigerian, they must understand oppression or police oppression. So, of course, they have a reason to go there. But there were some people that were saying that, oh, we're just going there because they were celebrities, maybe this night. So maybe I'm not speaking completely different from what you're speaking. This is something I'm just exploring right now. It's a new thought. I'm trying to say, maybe that work even needs to be done before the work of actually stepping out, which is why we might not be able to, like, make, maybe have like 1% of the population or 10% of the population out there, because people are not, first of all, people maybe do not sit with themselves to think about how they need to actually resist the state. Because actually, maybe if your mind, your thinking process is a bit right, then you can maybe step outside. Maybe that's actually the first step. Because what would be the explanation outside of maybe what you've said before, that maybe people have jobs to do on day-to-day basis, so they can't go outside? What other explanation would be there that most people would just want to sit in their house and lock their door, as if it's really not their job? They'll just wait and say, okay, I hope the protest finished tomorrow, let me go out. Or I hope the protest, has the protest finished? I hope the protest does not reach your side. That's what people were doing. They were making phone calls and say, protest did not reach your side, but better. you know so maybe the first work is like the mindset of, we need to actually resist the system no matter what. When you have that mindset, then you can actually go outside and face a dangerous system, and not even face it with the mindset of, I'm going to lose. Then you maybe look for the tools that you need to go out there and actually protect yourself. I'm just saying that so that maybe we can have a little bit of like a synchronized thought for this before we wrap up or anything like that. But I cut you off. Just complete what you were saying.
Yeah, I actually agree. I mean, it all starts and it all stops in the mind. It is all about the mind, all about your mind. So I think even when we are talking about being, challenging the system in a radical manner, it all starts in your mind. So I absolutely agree with you. But I just know that a lot of work needs to be done. A lot of work needs to be done, and people need to understand that there's no other way, right? There's no other way. We
Yep.
have, and I think people are taking the option of, I think a lot of people, and again, see, I think a lot of things, and that's why personally I'm coming to a point of view whereby I'm no longer blaming anybody for anything. I mean, like, I am no longer blaming anyone. If people say I'm going to stay in my house, I mean, stay in your house, you do you, like, do whatever you have to do. But I'd rather work with people who are on the same wavelength and say, hey, okay, so if we're 10 in number and we know that we need to challenge the system now, what is the best way that we can use this numbers? Because if you look at it, like when we say protest, I mean, people are protesting, but maybe not just through our own particular style of protest. We saw news of like 250,000 people leaving the country in 6 months to go to the UK. That's a protest. That is a protest. That's a vote of no confidence on the leaders of Nigeria. You understand? That is it. And a lot of people, that's just one country. Now imagine when we now talk about all the whole countries, across the world, you'll be amounting to almost 5 million people living in the country under 6 months or under 1 year. And what's our population? So if we do that for the next 10 years, we'll have lost about 50 million people, if not more. If not more, because if 250,000 people can go to just one country, imagine all of the whole countries in the world, including Togo, including Benin Republic, where Nigerians are going to go to have a better life. Yeah, so it's another form of protest. So we must understand our people, and I think that's what a lot of us are missing it, including myself. I think we are failing to understand people. So we need to understand them. We need to understand the reason why they say these things, and we need to come up with new theories. We need to come up with new solutions. We can't apply doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is madness. So if we understand that a lot of people, instead of wasting their time, there's no one that has, maybe with the exception of a few of us, that will really have the finance to leave this country and will say he's not going to leave the country. Rather than go and waste your time protesting and you get killed or whatever it is. So a lot of people are choosing not to fight. And you also have to understand why people are choosing not to fight. Is it as a result of cowardice? Maybe. Yes, there's a certain percentage that we can allocate to that. We've not done any study, so we can't tell what. But then there's also another thing that is preventing people from fighting, which is the narrative. And I like I said, most people might not agree, but you see that narrative that was pushed in the last election, where people demonized protesters, where people told them that, if you protest, you're not qualified to be a leader. Activists don't make great leaders. You are just greatest gbagba, greatest gbogbo. You are just a noisemaker and everything. Now, why would I hear that? Why would that message be constantly be reinforced in my ears for over 6 months to 1 year? And you now expect me to go and protest? So, these are some of the things that are killing. There are a lot of narratives that are beyond dying. I don't think people are scared to die. A lot of Nigerians, they're not scared of dying. A lot of people are not, even those of us who are going out to protest, we're not the most courageous Nigerians. But there's just lack of interest, and we need to bring back that patriotism. We need to inspire people to see that, hey, this thing is for the love of country. This is not just don't do it for other people. If it was based on other people, if it was based
But
on
then that means it's not going to work. Like, if you say for the love of country, that's exactly why people are not doing it. People are like, there's no reason for me to go and die for Nigeria. So I think maybe
it's not for Nigeria. Like, it's not for Nigeria. It's for Nigerians. I think we need to separate Nigerians from, like, when people say Nigeria happened to you, Nigeria has never happened to anyone. It's Nigerians, your fellow Nigerians, that are actually happening to you, whether in form of leaders or we as citizens. So people will not go out. I would protest because I know that I love Nigeria. I love the weather. I love everything. I know that we have a lot of resources. I love my country, but I don't necessarily love the way Nigerians think, the way they react to people that take radical action. They see you going for a protest and they're abusing you. So that discourages those who even have courage or the will to fight. So we need to separate Nigerians from Nigeria. They are two different things. A lot of people want to fight for Nigeria, but Nigerians discourage them from actually fighting. And again, sorry, just to say this, right? You look at people's reactions to people who have died fighting from Nigeria. That's not Nigeria's fault. People who have died fighting for Nigeria. If Fela Kuti didn't have children who are celebrities, who are musicians today, what record? Who will remember him? How many people are celebrating Gani Fahmi, the most arrested man in Nigeria, the person who defended all of the activists who are still alive? If you talk to them today, it was Gani Fahmi who defended them severally or enabled their defense. So, a lot of Nigerians are not doing anything to encourage those who actually have the courage to fight, because it takes courage to fight. And that's why you see that a lot of people don't want to participate. All those, I also understand all those talk of people who say, I don't love Nigeria. I think all those things are just, the name Nigeria is just a construct. It's just something. Whether you call it Biafra, whether you call it anything, we are still talking about this geographical land, this land that we actually have, and this same time zone that we all are in, right? So I think that's just basically it for me.
Yeah, that's fair. So Sinosha, I want you to also maybe share your thoughts, and then you speak on this case where they said they are blocking account of people they suspect to have sponsored the End Bad Governance protest, even though the narrative that pushed the protest was that there's no sponsor, there's no leadership, and then things related to that. But the Nigerian state, I've seen it in various newspapers where they say they've arrested up to, they've blocked a couple of accounts, things like that, and then also speak to maybe the prosecution, right, of some arrested people, because they said they arrested some people, and up until now I don't know that they've actually they've opened their cases in court, because the last time they said they were going to have their cases, they were going to bring them to court or take them to court, it was postponed. So yeah, just share your thought, and then if you could speak on that.
I think largely, as usual, and as it's become customary with the Nigerian state, there's no case anywhere. Michael Adamoye, all of these comrades, brothers, sisters that were arrested, go and check their account balances. Go and check it. The Nigerian state is like a confused young man who will leave leprosy and prioritize curing dandruff. So the Nigerian state will cure the dandruff and then come back to will try to cure the dandruff and make a very big deal of the dandruff. And later, having expended all the resources on dandruff, they will not now have resources to kill the leprosy, if it can be killed or cured. So in the real sense, there is no case. They can't even prosecute anybody. You will see. They will adjourn. And the adjournment is with the intention of delaying or eating into the life of the majority of the people that they would have arrested. And that is where I also think we have failed. In the real sense, none of us should be left behind whenever we go outside. If you lock them up, you must release them. If your thug carry them and kill them, they must wake them up. Unless you do that, you are going to have to leave the office before we leave the street. And I think until we get to this point where we make this kind of demands, where we set this kind of ultimatum, I'm not sure we are going to actually get the kind of country we want. So when you ask me how is the prosecution, most likely going to be, I think it's going to be some of those useless gathering of people whose time could have been used for more productive things. One. Secondly, I think it's also going to continue to shed bad light or reflect badly on the Nigerian state because there's no case to be answered. So I just think as much as we might have some fears on our mind for these guys, the only thing the Nigerian state will do with them is waste their time. Nobody amongst them is going to get convicted. The Nigerian state does not have evidence. If they have evidence, they would have taken these guys to court immediately. They would have ensured that the court is sits, and then that the process of the court goes smoothly. And don't forget that most of these things that they are doing, right, there's a need for a witness, right? People like Tinubu will be a witness. I don't know, maybe people know how that witness thing works. People like Tinubu will be a witness. Because he will have to come and tell us, maybe when he was doing or he was part of this, if he indeed was part of them, that whatever they were doing, they were threatening us. Because they said some of them have been charged with threatening. What do we call it? Treasonable felony. So, in essence, I do not think anything will come out of that process. It's just going to be a shambolic show, and then it's going to be a one that wastes Nigeria's resources. But generally, that's how I just see it. Nothing else will come out of it. And it goes without saying, right, that this is part of what we are fighting against. So many people in Nigerian prisons who were just coming back from work, they were picked one time and they said they were part of armed robbers and what have you. No intelligence gathering, no intelligence implementation, just straight out going on the street and picking people up and locking them up. So I will rest there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will rest.
Durotimi, just let us know your advice to Nigerians, as as short as possible. So I think we'll come to the end.
Yeah, so I don't really have any advice for Nigerians. I think everybody should do whatever they feel is best, at this point.
Exactly.
Because, we don't give advice since like 1960. So everyone just do whatever works for you and, let's hope for the best.
Yeah, me, I've already mentioned it time and time again that fix your mindset. And I feel like even if you don't want to fix your mindset, I know that a lot of people say Nigerians are greedy, blah blah blah. I think Nigerians are not greedy because I don't know, there's self love. I don't know. There's a lot of things I'm like, this state is like spitting on your face and you're like, you don't care. Just care about yourself. Because it's weird. It's so weird the way you react to, or the way the reactions. And if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't even have to talk, because there are a lot of people that programming cannot go there. When we see on Twitter that especially people that you feel like they are really pro-establishment, that programming is just so deep in their minds and they can't really just explain it. So just shut up. You don't really, nobody needs your advice. Don't advise any other person that wants to go and like fight for their right. And if you don't want to fight for your right, cool. I don't know. It is well. ah, it is well. Yeah, it is not though. It's not. It's just a thing that we see as Nigerians.
Thank you for your sincerity.
Yeah, so thanks for listening to us. Follow us on all our platforms and share this episode and join us next time. Bye.
Listen to full episodes of Out of the Box on Spotify, Audio Mac, Apple Podcast, or YouTube.